Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, please set your electronic devices to silent, but have them ready to email or text your questions for the panel to askmecerts@gmail.com. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mike Warlick back to the stage.
I have a test for everybody. If you wanted to join AFCEA, where would you go? Booth 301. Bzzz. That's closed. All you have to do now is go to afcea.org and look for membership on the top of the bar there. You'll find it. Thanks for being with us again today, and we're going to get started. And one of the last things I told you yesterday was tomorrow, which is today now, will be fast and furious. So we're off to that start. We have a great panel that's before you right now, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick introduction so they can get going. The moderator today is Nancy Lamaro. She's the lead interagency partnership office of the Chief Learning Officer, DHS, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. She will lead the discussion this morning of another topic that I think we're going to get a lot out of today, which is entitled Enduring Pandemic Impacts to the Cyber Workforce. With that in mind, Nancy, take it over. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike. See some stragglers. We're out in the hallway. Hopefully they'll come back and join us. We have a great panel for you guys this morning. So again, my name is Nancy Lamaro. I'm from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. And at CISA, we like to say that we're the nation's risk advisors. Our vision is a secure and resilient infrastructure for the American people, and we partner with governments, industry, academia, and associations to help understand and manage that risk. So one of the many risks that we see to the nation's physical and cyber infrastructure is the lack of skilled cybersecurity professionals. As you know, they're needed in every industry, in every government, in every service, in every business, right? And we often hear the stats in this space, which we've heard about, I'm sure, all this week, about the massive cybersecurity workforce shortage that we face in this country and around the world. So in good times, we face challenges, training the future workforce and retaining the current workforce, which obviously the General spoke to a little while ago. But then the COVID pandemic hit. Early in 2020, obviously, starting in early 2020, we've been faced with illnesses, death, school closures, business closures, just running the gamut of the effects that we've seen from the pandemic. So here to discuss those enduring pandemic impacts to the cybersecurity workforce is our distinguished panel, which I'm very happy to be with me today. We have Dr. Chuck Gardner from Cyber.org, Stanton Gatewood, who's also from CISA, Greenwood, excuse me, I always want to say Gatewood, I don't know why, and Dr. Sarah Lee. So Dr. Gardner is the Associate Director of Cyber.org, which is the academic arm of the Cyber Innovation Center, which CISA. He began at the Merchant Marine Academy, but after leaving the maritime industry in 2006, he became a career-changing educator. He began as Director of Curriculum at Cyber.org and oversaw the team of content authors and subject matter experts and helped deliver professional development workshops to teachers, especially in K through 12, across the country. Now as the Associate Director, he oversees much of the national outreach for standards at adoption, pathway development, and education and workforce development initiatives. Mr. Greenwood is my colleague at CISA, and he's the cybersecurity coordinator here in the state of Georgia, working and helping our stakeholders around the state. He has more than 35 years of experience in cybersecurity program management and strategic planning, including the U.S. military, state and federal government, higher education, and global corporations. Dr. Lee has served as the director of the school, currently the director of the School of Computing Sciences and Computer Engineering at the University of Southern Mississippi. She's been there since August of 2020. This current position follows 9 years at the Mississippi State University, where as the assistant department head, she provided leadership to cybersecurity course and curriculum development and K-12 outreach programs. Prior to her academic career, she also spent 19 years with the FedEx Corporation. So, welcome to all of you. Again, I'm very excited for our discussion. So I'm going to begin first by giving each of you all a chance just to give some opening remarks and tell us how the pandemic has affected each of you. Chuck, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been here all week and had a small theater session on Monday. Got to meet some folks. But I'm representing, I think, what's an underserved topic this week is K-12 education and the role it has to play in cybersecurity workforce development. We're fortunate enough, Cyber.org is fortunate enough to be funded through a grant from CISA through the CTAP program to write curriculum for K-12 instruction, give it away at no cost to teachers, support them with professional development, and also work with teachers, schools, districts, regions, state departments of education to help support cyber instruction in the classroom. We sit on standards committees across the country. We've written our own standards to support classroom instruction in the area of cybersecurity. And we've got a library of curriculum that supports K-12 instruction. Our team is small. We're headquartered out of Bossier City, Louisiana. We've got a couple remote folks, so we understand, right, so that teamwork, that camaraderie that the general was talking about this morning, but also the struggles of being that one-person office at home with all of those other distractions that are coming at you from all sides during the day. And we're working with our educators to make them as comfortable as possible. And back in March, April, May 2020, we were struggling as well with that transition. I think we have some interesting, solutions figured out that we've been sharing with teachers. But hopefully what we can talk about today is some of those ideas that have worked, maybe some of the things that haven't, and what we see as next steps for K-12 instruction. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Chuck. Stanton?
So the cybersecurity workforce gap was happening long before the pandemic, actually, tell you the truth. What we are witnessing, ladies and gentlemen, is we're witnessing what Donald Rumsfeld would say, the unknown, in that over 35 years, and I don't think that I didn't think at all that a pandemic would come along and hit the workforce the way it has. The workforce gap is continually expanding. What we're suffering from is not just having cybersecurity professionals or people that call themselves cybersecurity professionals. We're suffering from filling the gaps of people who have 30 years, 20 years experience. Sure, they're coming out of K through 12. They're coming out of with associate's degrees. They're coming out with bachelor's, even up to PhDs. But what we're really hurting is, can they fill the shoes and can they hit the ground running? That's the problem that we really have. Now, multiply that resource constraint that you have, multiply it with the fact that our entire civilization is suffering from COVID and the pandemic itself. We not only don't have enough people to fill these positions, even if they could fill these positions, they're sick. They can't go to work. They can't think. They can't do whatever else you're suffering from when you get the COVID. It's a tremendous challenge that we're facing today. Not just to qualify the KSAs. Remember those? Knowledge, skills, and abilities, and experience. We're suffering from that. But now you've also erased a great number of folks that might have filled the shoes of professionals like myself. I've got 2 more years left. 2 more years left. Now, I've got to help find somebody that's going to step in for 35 plus years worth of cybersecurity and electronic privacy experience. This is a tremendous, tremendous challenge. And we'll discuss it a little bit more today.
Great, thank you. Sarah?
Hi. As most of you know, the pandemic impacted higher education in major ways. And one of the largest impacts was we had to shift to online. And some students thrive with that, but a lot of them struggled. And one of the challenges that we have in Mississippi is the lack of high-speed internet. Not everybody has internet at home. And if anything positive came out of the pandemic for the state of Mississippi was that there's a plan now for everyone to get access to internet, which is huge. Another thing that I saw a lot of was food and housing insecurity with students. There was the CARES Act money that helped some. I'm co-founder of a nonprofit called the Last Mile Education Fund. And in 4 months in 2020, we gave out 256 grants with a total of $305,000 for students who no longer had anywhere to live because the dorms had been closed. They no longer had a job because they were working on campus and needed that job to pay for food. So that was a huge impact from the pandemic with higher education students. And also, as the general mentioned, that lack of teamwork and being around people. There was a lack of the co-curricular learning that we try to provide for students, whether it's competitions or a cybersecurity club that they're part of. And I saw an impact to their mental health with a lot of students for not having that face-to-face contact, that people contact. So those are some of the things that I'll talk more about as the panel continues.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Okay. Let's start with our specific questions. I have a question for each of you, but then of course other panelists can chime in and offer any additional context. Let's start with Stan. So during the last 2 years, you've continued to provide those cybersecurity guidance and resources to small and medium-sized businesses across the state. So what have they struggled with during these times of closures and other interruptions, and what advice do you give them to help them secure their cybersecurity posture?
I think we're suffering from the same thing, whether you be small, medium, or large, in that when you go to the well, or should I say when you require or need another body as far as cybersecurity is concerned, they're just not there. It's just not there. And don't get me wrong, I too carry a CISSP and a few other certifications, but even if you have that and you're sick, or you can't work, or you don't have internet, or what have you, they're suffering. They're suffering tremendously. My focus is on state, local, territorial, and tribal governments, as well as some super large private corporations. But what I've seen with the smaller to medium-sized businesses is the same thing that they're suffering from, the large groups are suffering from, in that they have a desire. And even before the pandemic, they had a desire to hire someone. They didn't know how to hire them. They didn't put together the proper job description. They didn't know what a nice document was, as far as roles and responsibilities and things like that. And also a lot of them, ran into another resource constraint. If we're going to define the word resource here, we're talking about people and we're talking about space and time and money. Most cybersecurity professionals that I know and have grown up with and matured with over time, they're not going to answer an ad, if you will, if you're below six figures, double six figures, mid six figures. Some of these cybersecurity professionals, but before the pandemic, were pulling in $150, $250, $500 per hour. And a lot of them do have the credentials, but now what's happening is the cyber workforce gap is increasing, but the numbers of people that are actually throwing their hats in the ring or qualifying is tremendously increasing as well, and that's their competition too, tremendous competition. So what have I really seen? What have I really seen with the small? Again, they are suffering because they cannot pull in the right people, or they don't have the money to pull in the right people. They don't know that they can go to tech schools. They can go to K through 12. They can do internships. They don't know that kind of thing, and we need to educate them on that, where to look for individuals. And this is a bit of a pet peeve. I've got to say this. Again, yes, I have a few certifications. 35 years will get you that. But because a person has a CISSP does not make them ready, willing, and able, or capable. It really doesn't. They really need to find somebody that's got experience and hit the ground running. Or they need to find somebody that doesn't have the experience and work with them and build them if time is on their side. I love this stuff.
Excellent. Thank you, Stan. Let's move to Chuck. Can you tell us how the pandemic has affected Cyber.org's ability to continue to train teachers and administrators with the school closings, inability to hold big in-person training events? I think the last time I was at this hotel was that one, and I have attended your in-person training events, and obviously schools have differing priorities during the pandemic. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Sure. First of all, I thought for sure your pet peeve was going to be, if you're not first, you're last. No? Okay. If you know, you know. Again, Cyber.org, through CISA funding, is able to, again, develop curriculum, but also support teachers in the best uses of that content in their classroom. And in order to do that, we need to train. We need to teach. We need to get out and do manipulative projects so that teachers understand the use of this content in their own classroom. Typically, our workshops pre-pandemic had been like a flipped classroom. Our teachers who attended the workshops came in and they were the students for the day. It was their first time seeing the curriculum, and we didn't want to lecture them or death by PowerPoint them. We wanted to get them involved and get them working and doing. We have, a variety of projects. We have an egg drop project in our middle school curriculum, where, you build a vessel and you have to protect the egg, but there's a storyline to it. It's not, your egg drop that you might have done, back in middle school. It's revised. It's 2.0, and there's cyber threads and everything in it. But it requires people to get together. So we had to adapt. Obviously, Mike made a reference yesterday to, we've all been on enough Zoom meetings. How do you make that engaging? And there are ways to make it engaging. There's a reactions panel. And one of the first things I'll do when I start a Zoom professional development workshop is open up your reactions panel, find the red check, green check, and the red X, because you're going to be hitting it a lot. And that's my time for formative assessment. K-12 teachers understand this. You have to pause during instruction for formative assessment. How are you doing with this material? Are you on track? Are you behind? Are you ahead? So we're going to pause often, and I'm going to ask you I'm having a green check, red X question. Right? What was for lunch today? Was your lunch good? What's the weather outside? Is the weather good? And you can kind of build a rapport with folks, generate that camaraderie by just giving them short opportunities to reflect. Of course, we're going to stop and ask them questions about the material, the workshops, the curriculum. But you've got to stop for non-relevant pauses too, and give them a minute to just, brain dump, because there's a lot of fatigue that can set in on an hour Zoom call, let alone a 3-hour workshop. So the team, I've got about 15 recovering educators, we call ourselves, all former classroom teachers that are developing curriculum and leading these professional development workshops. And we see teachers from across the country, and we want to give them time to voice their concerns so that we can suggest methods that we're employing to kind of deal with some of that. And the Teams product from Microsoft has come a long way since March of 2020, and it has become our number one method of internal communications. And what's great about it now is that they've opened it up where you can talk to folks outside your network through the application. So we're having these conversations during workshops, and then after the events, we'll see that Teams thread pop back up to the top because someone who was in a workshop a week or two ago uses that thread to ask a question, ask a follow-up. And what's great is it's always on. We want to set some boundaries, right? 9 to 4, 8 to 5, something like that. But, for teachers to know that there's someone there listening when they have a question, even if it's not, being able to see us in person, has been a really great opportunity for them to, have that confidence that they can bring this to the classroom, and if they have a question, they're just going to ask, and someone's going to be there to talk to them, to talk them through this. So Zoom, Teams, those have been really two great platforms that we've worked with teachers to show them some ideas on how to use that in these remote settings. Of course, as folks come back together in face-to-face classrooms, some of that goes away, but there's still going to be students who are dialing in to events. So how do you make those recorded sessions more interactive with students? And we're giving them that help, that advice through these sessions as well. At this point, we pivoted 100% virtual through 2020 in the first half of 2021. Starting around the summer of 2021, we started to do some in-person events again. And at this point, we're probably down to around 50-50 right now with in-person versus virtual events. Our website is still littered with a variety of virtual events that are running through the summer. And what's great about that is there's no geographical restrictions. And the network that teachers can form by learning with teachers from across the country has been powerful too. So I don't think we're ever going to lose virtual instruction just because it's allowed us to be in more places at once and to reach more teachers. But certainly there's nothing like butts and seats. Mike, am I right? Butts and seats.
Great. Thank you, Chuck.
If you know, you know.
And I'm pretty sure my egg vessel did not survive, but I remember dropping it from somewhere else in this conference
I think we were
center.
outside on the bricks.
Yes,
and not many are going to survive on the bricks.
With my team of teachers from I think Louisiana. I think where they were from at my table, and our egg did not survive. But anyway, thank you. Yeah. Sarah, if you could share with us some of the pandemic effects that you've witnessed, obviously in academia, and how it's impacted your efforts to train the future cybersecurity workforce.
Sure. Well, I mentioned earlier about how some students struggled with the switch to online, but some students strived. And one thing that I've been seeing a lot of, and I get lots of inquiries about, what kind of degrees do you have online? What programs do you have online? There seems to be a growing interest now in online programs. And before the pandemic at USM, we didn't have any online computing programs. So we are launching a degree in cyber this fall online, as well as an applied CS degree. So we're trying to move some of the programs that we have to an online pathway because there's demand for it now. There probably was before, but I'm just hearing it more now. And a lot of our current students who were attending face-to-face want to do online. They have jobs. They want to be able to keep working and go to school. Another thing that has come up for us in the last year, and I mentioned earlier about the bandwidth issues in the state of Mississippi. I mean, I have personal friends who right now do not have internet, cannot get internet at their home. They live in a rural area. And there's a plan now for everyone to get access to high-speed internet. And that's caused concern in some communities. And I'm going to give an example of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians that I have been working with for years, but I was approached by them. I've met with the chief there many times about this. Everyone in the tribe is now getting high-speed internet, and he's concerned about people's safety being online. So he approached me saying, what can the university do to help train our tribal members on how to safely use the internet? So we have been conducting multiple workshops on cyber awareness for the elders. We're going to be doing that with youth this summer, just about how to stay safe online. Some of that training we're doing in person, some of it we're doing virtually. And also, the Choctaws own a lot of companies, and as you were mentioning, Stan, there's so many jobs out there and high dollar and people competing for those, and a lot of these companies can't afford the six-figure cyber person, so they're looking at growing their own. So we've been doing some training for them with the CompTIA Security Plus. That's what we started with some of their technical people are going through that. That's not the only community. There's a company in the Mississippi Delta who's approached us with a similar request, so we're working with them. But that's been a pretty significant activity for us in the last year, is providing that kind of training.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, I have a question for all three of you, which I'd like you to all weigh in on. Is there something that the pandemic has taught you, any lessons learned, anything that you're going to be able to continue to apply in the future, either with how you accomplished your goals, how you effectively engage with your students or your stakeholders, what you've learned? Chuck, you want to go first?
Sure. the unique position that Cyber.org is in with a mix of remote and local workers, employees. It's the general mentioned before, the team building aspect, the camaraderie of it. It was tough to figure out how to balance, the third floor team, right? The internal communication that happened when you walk past someone in the hallway, or drop by their cubicle, versus the remote team who was at least a couple of clicks before you could have a conversation with them, whether it was writing the chat message or picking up a video call. And working through that has been a great opportunity for me and the leadership team to kind of figure out, right, how that has to happen to make everyone feel included. Because we heard a number of times that we know we're not part of that group chat. We know that we're more than a click away before you can have a conversation with us. And I said, there's an opportunity. We can hang a camera on the wall, and it's always on, and it's watching you work, and you can have one. I'll leave my camera always on, and we can just sit there and watch each other work all day. And that didn't fly. So we do other things. One of the latest opportunities was, it's going to sound cliche-ish, but we're using the Wordle game to encourage communication in the morning, right? One of the first things, there's a group of us and me in local and a couple of remote folks. We'll run through the day's Wordle puzzle. We'll throw our scores up there, and it's a little bit of conversation in the morning before the workday begins. I was talking to my dad recently, who's been remote for 15, 20 years now. And what he misses is that commute time, right? That time to get wound up in the morning and unwind on the way home. And I said, Dad, one of the first things I read is you got to respect that schedule that you had before you went remote. And even if that means going outside for a walk around the house, walk around the block, I said, you got to preserve that morning commute time. So that's one of the things I've been working on with the team, is to have some kind of morning decompression before things really start to ramp up. And it's important for a team. I don't know how that translates to educators in the classroom. Educators are, solemn people to begin with. We're always closing our doors because we've got to focus on the kids in the classroom. It's a one-man show, a one-woman show in most classrooms, most K-12 across the country. I co-taught for 2 years in a middle school environment, and it's puts you off balance, right? I've got to share my space now with another adult. I don't know how I'm going to do that. But teachers are by nature solitary individuals. So, I'd love to talk to administrators on how they're breaking through that in times of virtual distance learning. But that's how we're doing it internally.
Thank you. And I love that daily Wordle challenge and whatnot, because you're all doing it. We're all doing it. So making a little bit of a...
It took me 6 guesses today, by the way.
I saw you doing it, and I didn't try it yet.
It took me a minute.
But anyway. Stan, what about you?
So I started out in cybersecurity preaching. What did I preach? I preached fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That seemed to get their attention. And talk about the fire and the brimstone, and all heck's going to break loose, and you're going to lose money, you're going to lose this, you're going to over and over again. As my career kept going on and on and on, I got mellow with it. What I have found so far with the people is we're very adaptive, we're very inventive. We've got to get through this. We don't have a choice. We really don't have a choice. Complexity is your enemy. Simplicity will get you through. I'm telling you right now. I preach now awareness, preparedness, and resilience. CISA preaches this as well. That's where you need to be moving. Allow technology to continue to grow, because it is. Artificial intelligence is there now. Quantum computing is there now. Stay positive with these things. It's phenomenal that we are still in business in a lot of areas, still moving. And we'll get through all of this. As far as the workforce gap, as far as the businesses, whether it be small, medium, or large, as far as the pandemic, we'll get through this. I have nothing negative to say to you about it at all. Everything's positive because we are resilient. I remember a great academic said once, I think it was Mike Tyson, you can have all the plans in the world, you can practice, you can train and do whatever else, until I punch you in your mouth the first time and knock you to your knees. Well, that's even okay, tell you the truth. I don't want to get hit by Mike Tyson, but that's still okay because you now have resilience. Think about this. Think about this. No matter what they throw at you, bounce back. Have a plan. Tabletop exercise plan. Keep moving. Keep going. Bob and weave. We can do this. We can get through this, you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry. Sarah, how about you? And if you quote Mike Tyson, even better. Sorry.
Yeah. That was Dr. Mike Tyson.
Well, I think one of the things that we have to do in academia is make sure that we're preparing the future workforce for the future of work. And we've seen that, a lot of companies went completely remote during the pandemic, and they're staying that way. And we've got to prepare students to be comfortable working in that environment. And so I think there are things that we can do in academia so that they're working on teams together and having to communicate virtually versus having the in-person meetings. I mean, even take the pandemic out of the picture. We already have global software development teams, people working in different countries on the same project. So we've got to prepare these students so that they're comfortable working in either one of those environments. I think that's super important. Yeah. And something that's very important to me and that I saw so many students struggling with depression and mental health issues when they became isolated. And to Chuck's point, you have to maintain some self-care when you're, at home by yourself working remotely. And a lot of my students are probably going to be doing that. And I want to see us normalize conversations about mental health and self-care so that it's not something to be ashamed of. And let's talk about it, and let's not have these students and these employees get so far down that we can't get them back up. So that's something I'm very passionate about, mental health and self-care.
I'd like that as well. That you keep that routine that you had all those years and things like that. I'm seeing that a lot of mental issues. There really are, and you've got to work with these folks and yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen it on the K through 12 side as well. We've read a lot about that.
Oh yeah.
The mental health impacts on children.
Right, and how two students are going to react differently to similar situations. You mentioned how the connection that your daughter made with a teacher that wasn't even made in a face-to-face relationship. It was entirely virtual, and to be able to bond with an educator through that platform, I think it's remarkable. But the student next to her isn't going to have the same reaction, and we've got to make sure that all students are ready. We're going to be dealing with quite a gap, right, when students start moving on and progressing through grades and then get to a point in testing. Don't get me started.
So thank you so much. Thank you very much for your thoughts. We're a little early, so we have time for any questions from the audience. I don't know how you guys handle this. Okay. I see a wave from back there.
Question for the panel. We have a number of education programs in the DoD and Army today. What are we missing? What do we need to improve on to assist the K through 12 efforts?
So I can elaborate a little bit. A couple things have been mentioned today that I had written some notes down earlier. The general mentioned training leaders using simulated environments. Stanton mentioned tabletop exercises, wargaming activities. And we, Cyber.org, doing what we've been doing now for coming up on 10 years, we're only reaching 25,000 educators across the country. Internally, that's a massive number, right? I've got a team of 20 and we're hitting 25,000 teachers. But there's huge factor more than that. We are only hitting 3 million students, and there's close to 3 million teachers, and then another X 100, that would be 300 million, and that's the population. So my numbers are a little flawed, I apologize. 46% of all statistics are accurate, by the way.
Close enough.
So I wanted to mention some of the things that we're doing that we just need more awareness on. Cyber.org has a fantastic technical cybersecurity program for high school students where we're giving them access to a simulated environment, a cyber range. In this particular environment, we want to make sure that students, before they know, right from wrong, before that frontal lobe is developed and they're going to make wrong choices, we're giving them specific restrictions in this environment. For example, we're giving them access to Kali Linux, which is a great tool. It comes preloaded with a lot of great opportunities for students to practice offensive cybersecurity, so malicious attacks. The other half of that is I need a platform to attack, so we're giving them a vulnerable Windows 7. We're not giving them Windows 10, Windows 11, nothing that's going to get them in trouble with their school districts or their home network, or even, on their work network. It's a vulnerable Windows 7 Service Pack 0, right? The Swiss cheese of vulnerable platforms. And we're letting them practice. We're giving them all sorts of opportunities to do, credential harvesting, penetration and vulnerability testing, backdoor attacks. And what's neat is being able to use this in my job. The general mentioned phishing emails. We had an employee who received a suspicious email, sent it to me, said, should I send this up the chain? I said, before you do that, send it to our cybersecurity lead content developer. Let's detonate it in the range and see what happens. So he sent it to himself, logged in through the range, was able to access the email, turned on his network monitors, turned on his ICMP traffic flow analyzers, and hit the link. And sure enough, the place lit up, right? Incoming and outgoing traffic, trying to send credentials back, but since it was in this safe, secure, sandboxed range that we're letting kids practice in, no harm, no foul. But we got to see one of these things in action. And don't you know that's going to be the part of next year's lesson when we talk about phishing emails. We're going to give you a package that you can deploy and detonate in this safe environment, and you can see all these things come to life. So what kind of support can you provide K-12 awareness of these tools, of these curriculum programs? We're not the only ones doing it. We're partnered with Virginia Tech, who's got some great stuff. Teach Cyber is doing great stuff. NSA is doing great stuff along with CISA, so some really great programs out there. And then they get to those 2-year and 4-year institutions that have some really great cybersecurity, cyber engineering programs. But we need to make sure that the K-12 is aware and ready for those opportunities. So it's just awareness.
That's great. Thank you. Any other thoughts or any other questions?
Yeah, this question for Dr. Gardner. With providing cybersecurity curriculum and training for teachers and administrators, are you seeing more young boys and girls get excited about STEM? Additionally, are there any intentional efforts focused on girls and or underserved demographics?
Two great questions. First, we're still funded from CISA, so I hope that's proof of the impact that we've had. We're seeing increases in participation. We have an outreach program called Project Reach that specifically targets the feeder communities to the HBCU programs across the country that have cybersecurity programs. The pilot started in Grambling University in northern Louisiana. We partnered with 3 high schools out in Caddo Parish, provided them teacher training, technology, opportunities for students to interact with those Grambling cybersecurity students, and the dividends are tremendous. So the point was, again, make them aware of the programs, but also prepare them for success in these programs. Because the worst thing you could do is set a student up for failure. There's nothing more devastating, right, than not being able to succeed in a program that you think is made for you, which this HBCU program is a perfect opportunity for students across northern Louisiana. But then there are projects like Gen Cyber. There's Girls Who Code. There's a new group we just partnered up with, Black Girls Hack. Really great outreach opportunities that are increasing diversity in the cybersecurity workforce pipeline at a K-12 space. So there are groups out there doing it. If you have opportunities for volunteering or supporting these organizations, we've got links to a couple of them on our website, but I'm happy to talk more about all those great organizations that are doing things to increase representation across cybersecurity.
Yeah, I was just in the speaker prep room earlier today. Someone from Cyber Command, I don't see him in the audience now, but he was talking with colleagues about the lack of females that they're seeing, obviously, in this arena, and hopefully these programs, all the ones that you just mentioned, are helping to get these girls into it at a young age, because that's
raise awareness.
That's how we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, and show them people that look like them.
Exactly.
In those jobs. Yep,
exactly.
100%.
You guys have anything to add?
Yeah, there's the Women in Cybersecurity Organization.
Yes.
And we have a chapter of that at the collegiate level, but we also have just launched a Mississippi affiliate chapter, which is for professionals in cybersecurity. So I encourage you, whatever state you're in, to look for that organization. And we're just launching in Mississippi, but our plan is to launch some student chapters at the K-12 level of the Women in Cybersecurity. So a lot of the work that I've done since joining academia has been to get more women on computing pathways, and so I'm super passionate about that. And the Women in Cybersecurity is going to help us a lot in Mississippi. So.
Excellent. Awesome. Do you have anything else? Okay, go.
Can you describe how you feel U.S. Cybercom's forthcoming enhanced budget authority may affect our cyber forces and the cyber forces that are service retained?
Oh.
I'm out.
Yeah, you're out. Well, I think don't know anything specific about it coming from CISA, but I mean, resources is resources, right? I think
that's right.
The General just mentioned that earlier in her speech. So I think the more resources that we can put at this, the better, obviously.
Does the question asker want to elaborate?
Yeah.
Don't want to call you out.
Dun, dun, dun. Guess not.
Okay.
We'll move on. We have a couple more.
Awesome.
Given the discussions this morning and increased desire to work remotely, are there resources available to support people or children to do this? Example, many still don't have home computers, many don't have home internet or fast enough internet, and also lack of resources such as hardware to run government programs in a contract environment.
No, that's a great question. Sarah, I don't know if you want to elaborate how you guys have in Mississippi.
Well, without some federal dollars,
right,
we wouldn't be getting it in Mississippi. But the lack of access during the pandemic that was illuminated raised the priority with the leadership in Mississippi that we, if you don't have internet access, then you don't have access to education, health care. It's something that we all are entitled to have. There are some people who say that's a civil rights issue. Everyone, whether you're living in a really rural area or you're very poor, you should have access to health care and education through digital means. So, I know of people who during 2020, mothers of children who had to drive their children, and they sat in parking lots and got on the free Wi-Fi at Starbucks or wherever, and so that their students could do their assignments. And those were the mothers that had transportation that could take their children there. So I've forgotten what the question is I'm answering, but
I think you did good.
I can share a little bit. I was in Sumter, South Carolina last week, visiting with the County Department of Ed, and they're developing it's got a really great, catchy name, but it's a cyber bus. It's a bus that's outfitted with lab space,
Yep.
as well as internet. They can air gap it, so we can do some cybersecurity on the bus, but they can connect it and provide opportunities for students to connect. So it seats 6 at workstations inside it. It might be 8 at workstations inside, and then it's got more hookups outside around the bus. And they can bring the bus to the elementary, middle, and high schools. They can roll out short, engaging lessons, or they can be that workstation for students to come and connect to. I'm going to come up with the name and let you know before we break, but it's a really great project.
Yeah.
The last thing, I'm sorry, last thing is we have to make things lightweight. And by lightweight, I mean not requiring a lot of resources. We all love Chrome, but it's a bit of a memory hog. But if I can shrink the number of browser tabs that I have open, I'm going to, have an easier time navigating and consuming bandwidth. And one of the things that we're working on is the cyber range from Virginia Tech requires 3 tabs to be open to run those environments. I've got my login, I've got my Kali, and I've got my Windows. If I can condense that and somehow do everything in one tab, I'm going to save resources. I'm going to consume less bandwidth, and it's going to be easier on students no matter what device they're on, whether it's a Chromebook, a PC, or a Mac. So we've got to think of, optimizing the time that students are going to be online by making these things as lightweight and, miniaturized, if you will, as possible.
Yeah, I think part of the question was them not having computers at home, too.
Yeah.
And in the area that I'm in, the schools provided Chromebooks or other machines to the student. But I want to share this example. So one person I know contacted me during 2020, and her daughter needed to upload a file. Can we come, because they don't have internet at their home, can we come to your home and upload it? So they came to my house, but my internet's not very fast because I live out in the country too. Couldn't upload it. So I had to call a friend in town who I knew had high-speed internet. Do you mind if this other friend brings her daughter to your house so she can upload a file? I mean, we shouldn't have to do that. Should not have to do that. And what about the child whose mom didn't have a friend to call? They weren't able to turn in their assignment.
No.
And I think the worst place to take a course is Starbucks
Yeah.
or McDonald's. Sorry.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you. One more question. We've covered tools and resources available, but specifically to cyber workforce managers, do you all have any specific tools or resources to better encourage remote working habits or best practices?
For remote working habits, I think if we have anything. I'm trying to remember if we have anything at CISA that's outward facing. But I think one of the things, obviously, is the awareness piece, which we do have a lot of that at.
Shields up.
Yeah, shields up, exactly. Exactly. We do have a lot of that information on our public-facing websites, and I'm sure Stan can also expand on things that we share with our stakeholders. But that awareness is key, and making sure that everyone is practicing good cybersecurity practices, but because obviously we're only as strong as our weakest link. So. Very important. I don't know if you want to expand at all, Stan.
So it is a little bit scary having folks finally getting on the internet for the very first time. It's a shock, as a matter of fact, to watch them open up their browser and immediately head over to TikTok. It's a shock to watch all of a sudden. A few weeks later, they're able to defend themselves against attacks and start launching their own attacks. It's a bit of a shock, but these are interesting times. We just need to be able to do a little bit of control of those of that environment. That's all. But again, as Nancy said, we got to look at things like Shields Up, which is a CISA program which teaches awareness training and education, and all this is no cost.
Yes. Oh, yes.
There's no cost whatsoever. You just have to, as Dr. Lee said, you've got to have a computer and you've got to have the internet access and things like that. But there's wonderful things that cost absolutely nothing, and we really do need to inspire these folks as well. Not just the children, but people that are getting on the internet. Inspire them and find the people that are passionate about these things, and that's your next workforce. That's your next workforce. The number one question I get when I go to K through 12 to do a speech on cybersecurity has nothing to do with ransomware, has nothing to do with doing a cyber attack or whatever. The number one question is, how much money do you make?
Yep.
Really. And it's kind of, it makes you smile a little bit when you're looking at somebody that's half as tall as you and they're saying, how much money did you make last year, mister? I'm like, I work for the federal government, so, I take mine in Bitcoin or something, right?
I'll just add that we've got to keep it light, got to keep it informal, got to meet our remote folks on their turf. We do have some non-negotiable time during the day, right? Some sacred time where you are going to be available. Otherwise, how you get your 40 hours is entirely up to you. And one of the things we just recently started was goal setting, because I think in addition to the camaraderie is the routine, and wanting to be held accountable for things that I accomplish and recognize for things that I accomplish, but also hold my feet to the fire on things that I don't. So we're doing some goal setting through just informal communications on Monday mornings, and again, meet folks on their terms, on their turf. Recognize the backgrounds. I always ask on my workshops that are happening after hours, you got a 4-legged coworker, bring them in. I want to see them on the screen. The 2-legged ones, they're welcome too, but I want to see the 4-leggers. So, meet them where they are.
Excellent. Yes, my needy pandemic rescue dog is, a few times I've had to, come in my lap a couple times during the meeting because he was being obnoxious. But anyway, so excellent. Well, thank you guys so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this panel. I think a lot of great information shared and great experiences. And thank you for questions. Thank you for your attention, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
That was our final question for the panel. Please welcome Mike Warlick back to the stage to formally thank this panel on behalf of ASEA and our audience.
What an interesting and unique panel that you just heard. So for Nancy, Chuck, Stanton, and Sarah Lee, thank you very much. You were really enjoyable. I think probably the quote of the day was Chuck Foreman. So I'll have to say another one. Probably will go over like a lead balloon. But maybe Chuck Foreman could, George Foreman, could knock out COVID. I was hoping we'd get into a question maybe of how we could have our cyber and our government workers, or both industry and government, how they could communicate, retain and manage their jobs, from a remote location. So we didn't get to that question, but that's one that probably still exists out there today. Although we're coming back to work right now, there's still many jobs out there that people are trying to work from home. In the area of cybersecurity, cyber support, just security support for the network could be very challenging. But in any case, we'll cover that next time around.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. And just so you know, if you haven't been here, we will make a donation to the Fisher House to support our wounded warriors for all members of the panel today. Cool. And I really appreciate you getting together and working as hard as you did to put your panel together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do now, we're going to take a 15-minute break, a stretch break, a bio break, a water break, a coffee break. But come on back here, and we're going to start at 10:15. And our topic will be promoting STEM in a rapidly changing world in education.